welcome back. So we're picking up in our trip through Book 3 of the Nazarene Acts. We're up to Chapter 8. And as I mentioned in the previous video, when these chapters were translated from Latin into English, the English translator refused to translate these verses, or these chapters. It was a group of like 9 chapters or so that he just didn't translate. And he said they were unintelligible. And I did find a Latin translation and a couple of translations from the Syriac. So we have these 2 different types of translations from 2 different sources, and a total of 3 different translations into English that I used to put together the version that's in the Rock of Sure Foundation. And I probably spent more time on this section than any other section in the Rock of Sure Foundation. There were some times I was spending an entire day just on one chapter, and then I would move into the next chapter and realize that the context of what was being said in the previous chapter was not what I thought it to be. So then I had to go back and re-examine the previous chapter to make sure I didn't translate it in a way that was, that didn't fit with the context or whatever. And so it took a lot of time. I probably spent, on these 9 chapters, I probably spent close to 3 weeks on them. Trying to make it understandable, but also trying to retain the context, to retain the meaning. I didn't want to change what was being said. I just wanted to try and make it easier to be understood. So that's where it is now. The source texts that I used, I believe that they're all in the document. There's a link in this description to the documents that are available for download. And if you're wanting to see the original translations that I used to make this translation, they're all in that document. You should be able to download them and read them for yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenging piece of literature for sure. But I felt like it was important to get it out there, be as accurate as possible, but also be able to understand what's being said. So we're about halfway through it at this point. So picking up here in chapter 8, it says, "Therefore the above mentioned God, who is without beginning, begat his firstborn Son prior to all creation, as was befitting for God, not changing himself, nor transforming himself, nor dividing himself, nor emanating out, nor diminishing in anything. For remember that bodily passions are things which we even avoid attributing to the soul, because of concern that immortality would be nullified from it if these things should be attributed to it. God therefore begot, whom we have also learned to call a creation." All right, so we'll take a breath here, and we'll examine what's being said. So here, this first sentence: God, who is without beginning, begot his firstborn Son prior to all creation. This is why Yeshua is referred to as the firstborn of all creation. He was the first thing created. So, does that mean that the physical man, Yeshua, the body, was created first at creation? No, that's not what is being said here. It's obviously speaking about that, whether you want to call it a spirit or a soul or whatever term you're most comfortable with. The Son that was created before anything else was obviously not a physical body. I think that should be obvious. Now, what exactly it was past that, I don't know. I mean, I tend to think, and I do believe that Epiphanius, when he's speaking about the Ebionites, he refers to this, that they believed that Yeshua was created like one of the archangels. He was originally that type of an entity. That's what I believe. That's what I have believed for many years. I feel like that's what God was showing me, is that the Messiah, Yeshua, before he was a man named Yeshua. Like, notice he's not even calling him Yeshua here. He's just saying the Son. That the Son was originally an angelic type of being. And that then, later on, he entered into that body that was born through Mary, the son of Joseph, and became part of the physical reality. So it says, God therefore begot, whom we have also learned to call a creation. So he did not divide himself or emanate out or diminish in anything. So it's not like this whole belief that the Catholic Church puts out there that the Father and the Son are of the same substance or whatever. That's not true. Like, it's not like, he's different than the Father. The Father is without beginning, unbegotten. The Son is begotten. He's begotten of the Father. Therefore, the ideal of the begetter, that's the Father, which abides without form, permits calling the Son both a begotten and created thing, and the rest of those words. For in the things in which there is a difference of forms, it is necessary to perceive the begotten and the created. Therefore God begot while he remained. He did not suffer any division. For what exists is not more honorable than God, the non-originated one, insofar as he is not, for instance, begotten. For when he willed, he did not have sluggish power toward what he wanted, nor did the power exceed the will, but rather according to the degree that he willed, thus he also begot, while he was not changing and not suffering. Because if bodies through the necessity of density supply substance to make shadows, how much more should we assign the only begotten to follow the non-originated power, insofar as the will proceeds? So I think one of the things he's saying here is not like when a woman gives birth and the woman suffers. The Father did not suffer, no harm came to the Father. The Father is beyond such things as that. Like, he did not lose power. He did not suffer any type of harm. He did not divide himself. None of these theories and thoughts that people have come up with about the process of the Father begetting the Son. None of that happened. The Father is always unchangeable. He doesn't diminish. He doesn't change. He was not sluggish about the creating. He just did it. Whatever he willed, that's what happened. I recall well that Simon accused us of blasphemy that we say the Son of God is Messiah, thus equating God to humans and plants, and you have made haste from your entire soul to learn. So I think maybe this is another point to make also, is that this whole accusation from the Pharisees that Yeshua, in calling himself the Son of God, is making himself on level with God. And that's not, according to what Peter's saying here, that's not even possible. Because the Son is begotten, is a created thing. He's not like the Father, who was there from all eternity. Yeshua was there from the beginning of creation, but he was not there from the very beginning of eternity. And he can't be on level with the Father because the Father is unbegotten, unoriginated. The Son is originated. He had an origin. So it's not even possible to put the Son on the level with the Father because they're not the same. One is unbegotten, one is begotten. That's why Yeshua himself said the Father is greater than I, because he understood that he was not on that same level with the Father. The Father is he's on such a high level of existence that we can't even comprehend it in our mortal mind. While all willingly approve, Peter said, the way of this disbelief is clear, O Aquila and the rest of you others. For he who does not know for certain whether he should hear an opinion is afraid to believe. But when he has been empowered by one who's able to drive the cause of disbelief out of him, he will be encouraged with the joy of this introduction. And without being asked, he will hide the disbelief of his questioning by love of desiring to learn. But let us omit discussion of this thing until later, lest it divert you at some point from faith to an uncertain hope, and we would become absorbed in the questioning instead of faith. However, let God and the thought of him be preferred by us everywhere. Moreover, the non-originated God, existing inviolable, that's like saying untouchable, guarded the work through his will as if it were a virgin. But what is not non-originated is unable to be virgin, for it is made, as it were, under the touch of the begetter and the maker. So he's saying, and we're talking about virgin as in not touched, like a virgin forest. So what is created, in other words, what is not non-originated, this is another way of saying what is created, is unable to be, quote, virgin, for it was made under the touch of the begetter and the maker. So, this is not speaking of virgin as in the sexual sense. This is speaking of virgin as in not been touched. Virgin forest, virgin wilderness, that sort of thing. Yet let it be known how it was appropriate for God to beget the only begotten in the firstborn of all creation. But it was not, as it were, out of something, for this is the restraint of animate and inanimate things. Likewise, not partaking of intercourse did he beget something from himself, because he would not remain inviolable and incapable of suffering, having gone to travail in himself. To dare to say such things about the non-originated one is full of apostasy, for the sons of the wicked one are exposed to danger, believing themselves to understand piously, while they force a great blasphemy onto the non-originated when they conjecture him to be hermaphroditic. I recall that I've told you this already, my brothers. So, the Father did not physically procreate to beget the Son. Yeshua was created just through the will of the Father. The Father willed him to be, and he became. So any theory that involves any type of intercourse or labor or travail, travail meaning like the physical labor of birth, any of that is false. Therefore, while he, this is the Father, remained unchanged, God begot according to his pre-existing will, just as was said previously. Thus he is truly called only begotten, because he is what he is from the non-originated. He is what he is from the non-originated. He was created directly by God. And he is truly called Son, for he has been born from the unborn. The unborn, of course, is the uncreated. But with good will, calmly diffuse little by little the harmful dissension of those who dare to say the unbegotten differs from the begotten by the name of generation alone. So Name of generation, that's the title Father, Son. Name of generation alone. So there are people who dare to say that God the Father, the unbegotten, differs from the Son, the begotten, by the name of generation alone. The only difference is one's called the Father, one's called the Son. That's what they're saying. And to declare what through birth was separated from the unborn is a non-originated substance. So I guess they're saying that the Yeshua, the Son, not Yeshua, but the Son, the pre-existent Son, is a part of the Father that was separated from the rest of the Father. I think it's what's being said here. Non-originated substance. This is that Catholic doctrine, that the Father and the Son are of the same substance, a non-originated substance, and that Yeshua is co-equal with the Father. That's all this Catholic doctrine that came from the Council of Nicaea and these other Catholic councils. So Peter's saying that's not accurate. By the way, like this kind of thing, the fact that Peter is discussing this is one of the reasons that the Nazarene Acts is not believed to date from the 1st century. Some of the sources used in the Nazarene Acts is, but they believe that it was created by Ebionites to dispute against the Catholic Church. But the source documents used in the Nazarene Acts come from the actual teachings of Peter and the other apostles. So, putting it together in the final form that it is now, it is believed that occurred in the 3rd or 4th century, but it's based upon earlier documents, earlier sources. But the fact that Peter is here discrediting later Catholic doctrines, that's how they kind of date to when this was finally put together, is that they're saying this couldn't have been done before these doctrines came into existence. For it is stated thus, he is named something he is not, therefore he actually is, what he actually is has not been said, because he is unbegotten with respect to substance. But it is said, he is said to be begotten, the one that has not begotten is dishonored, especially since God exists rationally of himself and without beginning of himself. So it's essentially like mixing these various opinions, and it's all foolish, is what Peter's saying. Like, you're dishonoring the Father by making all these claims about the Son, which have no basis in reality. How is it possible to say that he who is rational and non-originated should not wish to be allied rather than to descend into the disposition of duality, as if he considered birth more honorable than his unbegotten pre-existence? For he is not a duality, nor does he command himself when he says, "Sit to my right until I make your enemies a footstool under your feet." He also does not contend against himself in such a way that something of him might remain non-originated while something else might be subjected to birth. Again, it's just pointing out the inherent foolishness of the way the Trinity doctrine is taught. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work. Also, in a non-originated way, he through foreknowledge would know that something would be born to him while something else would procreate. It is clear in every respect that it is more honorable for him not to be ignorant of what he would be in the future without himself, or with himself giving the command while something else receives the command. For example, what was said, "Sit to my right," or even what will pertain to the mission, or as if discovering himself, he will have extolled, saying, "And God saw that it was good." And after he agrees that the things that were made to exist were formed by the only begotten in 6 days, seeing his unchangeable will and the achievements of the divine work of his only begotten. So, My mouse is not wanting to do what I'm asking it to. Okay, anyway. Here he's saying that the things that were made to exist were formed by the only begotten in 6 days. So who was doing the creating in the beginning, in the 6 days of creation? Well, according to Peter, it was the Son. So the Father created the Son as a type of angelic type of being, a spiritual being, not a physical man. And then this Son, who we would, call the pre-existent Yeshua. Of course, this is not the physical Yeshua. This is the spiritual entity that inhabited him. But the Son is the one who created everything. And the Father saw his unchangeable will in the achievements of the divine work of his only begotten. So the Son, even in the beginning, in the 6 days of creation, he was doing the will of the Father, and the Father saw his own unchangeable will in the achievements of the divine work of his Son. And that is why God saw that it was good. He saw that it was good because what he saw was his unchangeable will being done in the achievements of the divine work of his only begotten. But if the non-originated was not made father or maker of himself, as we showed, how then should he create or spawn something out of himself who has not received birth or created thing as a name? For it does not have what it is through these things. But to say those things of God is impious. For that unbegotten substance of the invincible, non-originated, is apparent to those who are able to see even just a little. But if also, after birth, the substance never entered a state of separation, becoming numerically distinct, because he is not father to himself, would it not all the more take care to remain in a unanimity that does not admit of birth, namely that which was non-originated according to substance, but as a result of birth would be counted in the number 2? So this is not really speaking about a trinity, this is speaking about a duality. So even if you try to get rid of the Trinity and go to a duality and say it's just the Father and the Son, that still doesn't make sense either. That's what he's saying. Therefore, the mother of this inconsistency is ignorance of God, but its fellow worker and sister is neglect of the Holy Spirit. Now the Holy Spirit, the pledge and the guardian of those things that have been given to us from the Master, which we received not many days after his ascension, it is the seal from the only begotten, a most full declaration of his power, just as the only begotten and first begotten Son, who was before all things, is an image of the unchangeable, non-originated power. An image is indeed unique, remaining unblemished when it is viewed. It presents an image of the non-originated to the intellectual and sensible, in such a manner as, for example, should one want to show the sun or some other thing to those who are unable to see it by themselves, however, it is a necessity for them to see the sun, representing to their eyes the same necessity he should hasten to show the sun through a mirror, and he does not put it in the mirror by drawing the sun nearer. Thus, too, the only begotten himself is not the non-originated, but he shows himself through the whole power of the non-originated, as it is in his essence and his divinity. Now, he has been supposed to be the non-originated by those who have not diligently inquired, but with those where fear of God precedes the investigation, not only do they refuse to say such a thing, but they guard against even thinking such. While therefore there should be one non-originated and one begotten, it is not possible for the Holy Spirit to be called Son or firstborn, for it was made through something made. So the Spirit, he's saying, was made through the Son. But it is numbered below the Father and the Son, as if the first perfect seal of the second power. Indeed, he himself, bearing the work of the Father in an image through the balanced will of unborn steadfastness, consequently has been well numbered after the non-originated. So in other words, you're talking about levels. The top level here would be the Father. Below the Father is his only begotten Son. And then below the Son would be the Holy Spirit. So there's three different distinct levels of, I don't know if you want to say authority or what, but he's saying the Spirit came from the Son. Now, the Eusebius seems to have had an intimate knowledge of Ebionite and Nazarene doctrines. And Eusebius, in his, I think it's in Proof of the Gospel, I actually have a preparation for the Gospel. Okay, so Eusebius, in his preparation for the Gospel, has a similar ranking of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it appears that Eusebius himself was also aware of this. Of course, Eusebius is also one of our sources of knowing that the apostles and the earliest believers didn't eat meat or drink or strong drink. So Eusebius had some knowledge that others apparently did not about the earliest Christians. Many things then, and even others concerning the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit did he explain, and he convinced all of us. And he committed the truth to the sense of our hearing so convincingly that we were able to believe as if we had seen the evidence with our own eyes. Thus all of us, after having heard, were grieved concerning how much human beings had stumbled and turned away from the truth. So, now he's about to receive the announcement that Simon is ready for the debate. So this is probably a good place for us to stop, since we kind of finished out this other subject, and now we're moving back into another debate with Simon. So we'll go ahead and take a break here, and then we'll pick it up in chapter 12 next time.